Good morning, everyone. Hey. Good morning, tribe. Okay, welcome to day 3 of our conference. Today, we will turn the spotlight will turn to the process of transition. As we all know, the Serbs, the Sudanese, the Egyptians, the Georgian, everybody who has been through transition, they know that transitions are very difficult. They're very challenging by nature. Usually, authoritarian regimes, not usually, always, authoritarian regimes and dictators, they leave decayed systems that are rife in corruption, and they leave the social fabric and the economic fabric in disarray. And honestly, who's better to talk about transition than the Sudanese? In our modern history, in our post-colonial history from 1959 until date, it's a cycle of a revolution, transition, coup, dictatorship, revolution, transition, coup, dictatorship until date. In 2018, we have had a 6 months of peaceful revolution, non-violent revolution, where the entire nation took to the streets demanding to topple the regime. We did not demand any internal changes. We demanded completely to topple the regime. After 6 months of protest, different mobilization tactics, organizing, advocacy, international advocacy, we managed to topple the regime. 30 years of Islamist dictatorship and oppressive regime. Fantastic job. But when we are in transition, we seldom think of, when we are in resistance, we seldom think of transition and the challenges that we might face in transition. And I believe this is pretty much the case among activists. We're very taken by the moment, and we always improve what we're doing, and we always seek mobilization, numbers, campaigns, and tactics to topple dictators. But transitions are very difficult. Our transition was very difficult, not only because we were not prepared, but because the political scene and today's warfare is also different. Geopolitics were involved. Different countries with different interests were involved. Politicians were not prepared. We as activists, we were also not prepared. We have mastered our resistance tools. It's been 30 years of us learning, improving, trying, different attempts until we managed to topple the regime. And then we were like, and now what? We do have a transitional government. What can we do? I believe here is where well, it's hard to say we failed, but we failed. We failed because there were important files, like security sector reforms. We all shied away from talking about that. We had a very complex structure where we had the militia and the army in partnership. It was a power-sharing deal, but we didn't have the power as a civilian-led transitional government. It was very challenging, different files, civil service reforms, 30 years of corrupt regime, leaving behind decayed systems. A very complex structure that is really hard to explain in one day, 2-3 minutes, of militia in partnership with the army. Economic interest of foreign countries. Political agendas of international and regional political agendas overlapping with our national agenda. The most important file, and it was the elephant in the room that really came and crashed us, is the security sector reforms. 2 years through our transition, again, remember the cycle? Revolution, transition, coup. We had a coup. And then 2 years after that, the two generals started fighting over power, and my country is in a war now. a result that we did not expect, especially after long struggle. We have never stopped protesting. It's not with the end of the revolution that we went back home and we were like, we are the activists, we've done our work. No, it was a long process of us trying also to up our game. But that was not easy. This learning of, if there is one takeaway I would want to share with you, it would be that bringing change is one thing, actualizing it and seeing it happening is a different thing. We needed to up our game by being prepared for transition, and I don't have answers. I don't know how can we be prepared for transition. I have ideas, but I really don't have a final answer for that. We have mastered our resistance tools through the years, but when it came to transition, it definitely, and I'm confident now, that it requires a different set of skills, and it requires a different mindset that we really need to be prepared for. We needed a national dialogue. We needed to move from resistance into nation building. We needed to talk about national agenda. So in general, transitions are very challenging, very, very challenging. But we also need to read history, and we need to learn from each other. The Egyptians were there to give us lessons learned from the revolutions. Have we listened? Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. It's a different context, but definitely we need to learn from each other. We need to learn from our modern history. We need to learn that the new warfare is not guns and weapons, it's a war over resources. So how can we play different games and different advocacy, and how can we come up with a national agenda that really matches the reality, not only the patriotic voices of we want our freedom, but how can we get the freedom that we want to see, we want to live. So I'm going to leave the floor with questions. Oh yeah, not to forget, no, I don't want to forget to say that we are experiencing the largest displacement crisis in the modern history. There are more than 9 million displaced Sudanese. Internal displacement and those who fled to the neighboring countries as well. And that's a very different reality for us. That's definitely taking a step way back. It's not even the cycle that I have explained of us trying to pick up and see changes or be the change we want to see and organize again. I'm going to leave the floor with questions rather than answers because I don't have them. We know why transition failed. We do have different lessons and different examples. Like in this room, I can talk about 5 failed transitions. So we do have examples. How can we learn our lessons? How can we learn from our collective experiences to pave the way for a successful transition? What is the role of activists, politicians, academics that they can play in order to have a better future, in order to capture those stories, in order to have a different roadmap for transition? What can we do as an activist to learn to prepare ourselves for transition? It's on us to learn, because it was also on us. When it failed, we didn't pay the price. We are living the consequences of that. We are struggling. So how can we prepare? It's important questions. I mean, we need to be ready for this mindset. It's a complete different ball game. So I'm leaving you with these questions because I don't have answers, but we have the full day to talk about transition. Our spotlight today is the transition process. All right. I would like to, there is no need to remind you of the housekeeping rules. You remember them by heart now, right? It's been 3 days. Oh, really? Yeah. Are you sure? You are on time. You're good.
I don't remember that.
Okay. All right. Please be on time for all the scheduled activities. Keep an open mind when you're talking to... Oh, you remember those ones? No, you're going to listen then. Keep an open mind when you're talking to everyone in the room, because people come with different experiences, with different perspectives, and it's a great platform to practice to listen and to share as well. Respect privacy. Don't take pictures before asking people if they're comfortable being in the picture or not. seek assistance from the amazing volunteers, and you've done great work. You've done great job in the past 3 days. Thank you very much. Engage on social media. Okay, these are the rules. Yeah, here are the hashtags. Now I would like to invite the first keynote speaker, who is really amazing. When Sergio was telling me about her, I was like, oh, okay. But when I met her, I was like, wow, I wish I was you when I was your age. So, yeah, she is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, she's amazing. You're gonna see it. Like, I want to read what I wrote about her, but I would actually leave the floor for her to come and impress you. Dominika, Lasota.
Hi, everyone. Wow. First of all, I just want to, I promised to some people that I will put a disclaimer ahead of sharing my story. I haven't been to jail yet. I haven't been in exile yet. I also didn't have hundreds of thousands of people surrounding the military car I was in speaking to my president. That did not happen for me also, yet, maybe. But I think there are some stories from my beloved homeland of Poland that are worth sharing. My name is Domi. I'm a 22-year-old climate and social justice activist from Poland. And Sergia, a couple of months ago, after the general elections we've had in Poland, in which we set up and created this historic turnout, especially of young people and women, and we abolished the right-wing coalition that's been screwing our democracy for 8 years. Sergia emailed me and said, hey, Domi, I have this little thing. Maybe you want to come to the People Power Academy to speak about transition, movements in transition. And I was like, wow, transition is a good word for like a shithole, but okay. Sure, yeah, let's do it. And I say that it's a good word for shithole because that's how I felt after the elections, actually. To be very frank with you, I don't think I've ever felt more anxious and depressed as I felt after the elections. But we'll get to that. Because I first want to share with you of how all of this mess started. So I come from northern Poland, from a very boring, medium-sized city, from a family of workers, peasants, and teachers. We have not had any activist history. I wasn't born to a family of revolutionaries, whatever, none of that. I was a nerd. I was a very shy kid. I had like some bullying at school, and so I definitely was not an activist material at all. But at some point when I was 12, and I lived in like a little town, and I was just focusing on my textbooks and so on, and one day I found out about this thing called climate crisis, or like the downfall of humanity. And when you learn about a thing like that when you're 12, it kind of does something to your brain, like it breaks this beautiful, idyllic bubble that you were born in. So when I found about it, I couldn't say a word for a couple of days because I was so shocked, but still like the nerd I was like, some people out there have it under control. Like there must be some good people that will solve it, right? Like, let me just focus on my thing and, it will get better. Because I was always told by my parents that it can only get better from the fall of communist regime. It can only get better. Like we're on a good track. So I thought like, okay, it's gonna be fine. And then came the right-wing coalition, the government, the autocratic government that started screwing our lives. But I was a teenager still, so like that wasn't what I was interested in. Up until a point where I was 18, I was finishing my high school, and suddenly the pandemic came, and that took away my school. So I finished earlier, I didn't have my exams, so I couldn't prove to the world that like I did my job well. Our Polish government has been corrupting a lot of money during the pandemic, and definitely not caring about the climate crisis for sure. And so I felt like, maybe now, it's the moment to try to step away from that nerdy side and actually do something. So I joined Fridays for Future. Fridays for Future is a global youth climate movement initiated by Greta Thunberg, and the local group in my area had 2 people in it. So I became the 3rd, and when I texted them on Facebook saying hey, I was learning a lot, so I have I can translate things or I can write posts, so maybe it would be helpful. And they said, of course, yes, just come to the square, we're gonna do a summer protest there. So it's amazing, wow, I'm joining the revolution. And so I made this informative banner. I obviously I wrote down hundreds of millions of facts about the climate crisis and what we need to do. I brought it in. It looked super fancy and beautiful. And I got to the square, and there are 4 people with me. And I said, okay, well, that doesn't seem like a revolutionary vibe, but it's fine. Okay, let me just get going. And so we were sitting at that square, and it was super, the heat was incredible. I had this, a very beautiful banner that I brought. And, people were passing us, spitting on us, insulting us. But I was, sitting there, and, I felt super awkward. It was, at times really Jesus, what am I doing? But then I went home, and for some reason, I felt, so energized and so alive. I felt I've never felt that before, even though that was the most cringe thing I've done. There was just something about just stepping out of that hamster wheel that I was stuck for so long, and there was something about taking this fear and that sense of terrification and anger into something that was super small but made sense. And so I kept doing this. I kept doing the Fridays for Future actions. There would politicians would come to our town, and we would go to those rallies. We would confront them. We would put up some banners and then get beaten by the crowd and so on. But it was at times hardcore, but still I was just so excited. And with each of these actions we did, I was wow, it's shitty out there. Obviously, none of our demands were fulfilled because of our government gave absolutely zero fuck. But still, there was something in the process of it that it was incredibly exciting to me. And so I kept doing it, and I was by accident, I guess, or not. During the pandemic, the government, people became really very disappointed with the government because they were not handling it well. And so what the government did is that to squeeze some more power, they decided to ban abortion almost completely in Poland. And that just completely enraged us. And from that moment, I feel that activism for me got to another level. We've had massive strikes in Poland, and in my hometown, suddenly we were blocking roundabouts in a city that has not seen protests since decades. And at that point, when I felt that the power of our women, I was I'm not leaving this. I had plans to go abroad to a uni like this, but I was I'm not leaving. I'm staying in Poland. I'm dropping uni studies and so on, and I will just do this. I will work. I worked as a tutor, and I will do activism as much as I can. And so we did that, and we did organizing, and we did campaigning, and suddenly from me being a nerd, there was nothing else but activism, but that work that was important to me. And we did Fridays for Future up until the Russian invasion of Ukraine, when suddenly I got a phone call from my friend who was saying, from Fridays for Future activist as well, who was saying, hey, Domi, so there's this thing, it started, and can you help me evacuate from Kiev, from the capital of Ukraine? And I was 19 at the time, or 20 almost. And when you get a phone call like this, you freeze. and then you start trying to evacuate your friend from there. Like, I didn't have any like at school they didn't teach us how to evacuate friends from like war zone. So we started like trying to organize stuff, and we got a few of our activist friends from Ukraine. And I remember we had this conversation with my friends when he escaped. He said that, how can we even do like fighting for the future when there are bombs falling on my house, on my city, on my homeland? And what he said also coincided with all of the big political statements that we were hearing, of statements, of our prime minister, of the European leaders saying that, we stand in solidarity with Ukraine, we need to defeat Putin. And I was looking at it, but like with my climate background and like knowing not to trust politicians, like with my friends, we started checking actually like what's going on behind that beautiful PR. And we found out that actually there are millions and millions of euros or dollars flowing to Putin still during the war for his fossil fuels, for oil, coal, and gas, because that is the fundament of Russian economy. And so suddenly, I've had this background in, climate activism, so I knew that like they are ruining our future, and that like in a couple of years it's going to be so bad. And I was so scared of what's coming. But then, like, suddenly you stand and like you look at the facts, you look at the news, you look at the data, and you realize that like it's not any future that we're talking about. Like that corrupt system, those like political elites and that business elites are working hand in hand right now as we speak, putting profits over people's lives and screwing our lives right now, in the very second. And that, for me, that was a turning point. Like the invasion that came on top of so many of those like crises that I was aware of, that shifted a lot of things for me. That enraged me to the maximum. Because in Poland also, coming from a country that has such a massive history of wars, of colonization, of occupations, where like when I was in primary school, junior high school, we were always repeating that statement that, never again, we need to honor the victims of the war and do everything, wars do not fall from the sky. Like, we have to do everything in our power to not repeat the history, the trauma that happened to our ancestors. And suddenly, after being told that these horrors will not happen again, you open your Instagram, you open your Twitter, you open TV, and you see those horrors happening 24/7, live streamed. And I think that was the point where like my whole like childhood naivety, those ideas that I've had about the world getting only better and better, like that was shattered. The belief in the political system, for me, was shattered. The belief that our economy served the people, it was shattered. Because I knew, like firsthand, directly, I saw how these systems take the lives, take the health, take the dreams of my friends, of people close to me, away from them. And in that moment, we went to level up in our activism. And we started really trying to destroy, to ruin the PR, the theater of these politicians as much as we could. And so we would really search for when they're going to be, like at what political summits they're going to be, at what events, like what meetings they're going to have, what media they're going to speak about. Like we were trying to find any sort of way to just like cut their bullshit. And one of such stories was the story of a conference called A Future of Europe conference. And basically in May, that is 2 months after the invasion broke out, a friend of mine from Germany, he sent me an information that Macron and Ursula von der Leyen, so the head of the European Commission, They are organizing this conference about the future of Europe, where they invite young people from across Europe to speak about the future of Europe. So like how amazing it is and how amazing it can still be. And when I heard about it, I was like, OK, we need to figure out how to get in there. And obviously, it was like invitations only and so on. And like no one would invite us to a like thing like this, because they knew that we would be a bit of a trouble. But we somehow like figured out a way through like an NGO, and we took a Flixbus from Poland. We went there to Strasbourg. And we attended the conference. We survived listening to all the bullshit of Macron and von der Leyen. And then at the end, they were on the stage, and there was a lot of people on the stage as well, because they invited like youth delegates and so on, and they were taking selfies. And so we thought that we would quickly come up to the stage and go try to approach Macron, smiley face, and make him think that we're up for a selfie. And so we did that. I went down the stairs to the stage, and my friend came along with me. She was filming it, and then we jumped on the stage. We sort of caught a moment where he was alone. We were super smiley. We approached him, and then we started grilling him and asking him really difficult questions about why he, as the president of one of the biggest empires of this world, does nothing to stop the destruction of lives of people in Ukraine and Uganda. Why is he still such a big friend of the fossil fuel industry? And we asked him questions. And he, from being very smiley when he thought we were coming for selfies, he went to being slightly his smile disappeared completely. And what was the most interesting thing is that he was so surprised that someone at this amazing conference he put together asks him, accuses him of like doing bad things as a president, that he started trying to defend himself. He said that like he has done everything in his power to there's nothing more he can do. And I said, there's nothing more you can do as president of like one of the G7 countries? Like, the fossil fuel CEOs are really so powerful that you can say nothing to them anymore? And you can watch the video, because obviously we posted it online, and it went really viral at the time. And I think in that moment, I think the magic of that moment really was in the fact that I think it really showed to the people that like when ordinary citizens break through and stand in front of those guys in power, these guys are actually completely powerless and completely clueless. And for me personally, after this situation, I went back home to Poland, and I was feeling a lot that like, if this political system is to work out somehow, and if it is to secure our lives instead of ruining it, they're not going to do it. Like all of those big leads, all of those big leaders, they're not going to do it. If someone is like to do it, it's on us. No one will come, no one will repair it for us. And that was scary, obviously. And there was a lot of, I thought it was very unfair, because it is unfair. But I was like, we just need to build the movement and build it up and make sure that like we get them out of offices, and we bring in people who can really like serve us and fight for us. And this is how wschód came about. Wschód in Polish means both the sunrise and the east. So we like to think of ourselves as the sunrise from Eastern Europe, because that's where we come from. And after I went back home, obviously, me and my friends, we were totally broke. Like we quitted our jobs before they fired us from those jobs. Like we had no uni because we dropped university. So basically, like it was like we were too crazy. Like honestly, like I was listening to a lot of Polish rap at the time, because Polish rap is like really like, oh, screw you all. Like so I was like, I'm in this vibe totally. And so we started organizing the movement, and we somehow got some funds to organize a summer activity camp. We got people there. We really did not know what, like, we were really bad in movement building at the time. Like, we didn't have a plan. We didn't have vision of tomorrow, a strategy of like the pillars, like nothing of that. Like, we had none of this, but we knew that like we're onto something. And then the election year in Poland came. And for us, we knew that this is going to define what our region, what our country will be about for the next years or even decades. We knew that if the right-wing coalition will win again, then like we have no chance. Like they will like turn our country into this like pseudo-state, autocratic state, where we will be only friends with guys like Putin, Orban, and Trump, and Milei, and all that. So we knew that we have to do something to, just get ourselves something new, something different. But at the beginning of the election year, honestly, the vibe was terrible. People hated the opposition. People thought that the opposition does nothing because frankly, they did nothing. Like they really were lazy. It was not looking good. And the most demotivated group of people was actually women. Half of women between 18 and 35 didn't plan to vote, and that was my demographic. And when we heard that news, at the beginning I was really shocked, because I was like, how is it that, from that revolution that was happening, like from those women's strikes, that it was young women who were leading them and organizing them in the tiniest villages, in the most conservative places of our country. How is it that in the big year of the elections, like they quitted the game? But then the moment after, I was like, well, but I really feel it. Like, I'm so disappointed. I was so tired. We were so exhausted, so hopeless, seeing that after so many years, we have the democratic opposition who doesn't even speak about our issues, doesn't really feel like fights for us, and we felt really, really like, just hopeless. And at the same time, that hopelessness and that anger towards the mainstream politics was leading to the rise of the even further far right. And there was one party that was suddenly, like gathering that anger and like the anger and that rebellious energy among the people. And with my friends, we like, okay, like it's not looking good. We are super angry and hopeless, and it might fail completely. Like the third term of the right-wing coalition might actually happen. But then maybe let's just like give it a try, Maybe like it may not work out at all, but maybe for these few months that we have, for that year, we will just, against all odds, believe that another Poland is possible and that we can actually shake up this political system, show the people that there are other rebels out there, and maybe we will convince someone. And so we did exactly that. We would like disrupt political rallies. We would go to festivals and like give training on voting to people. We organized a silent disco in front of our government for the first time, and people loved it. Like people love silent disco. And they loved it, like we were dancing in front of this shitty place, like it was amazing. And then at the very finale of it, we decided like we need to really just like tell the stories of those angry, frustrated, hopeless women in our country. So we did this like video where we showed a few stories of the different struggles that we've been facing. And then at the end of the video, there's this like picture of those like crowds of women we invited into like that video, where all of them, they stand like that, as saying that we've been silent, but then at the end of the video they do this. It is a way to say we've been silent already, and now we're gonna screw you. And when we published it, like Poland went crazy. And there were like hundreds and thousands of pictures of women posting like a selfie with them, say like, showing a fact to the system. And it was amazing. That was like Polish women at its core, like they are totally that. Angry, but angry in a way that they are able to transfer that anger into something really powerful, into something that moves our system, and none of the parties could respond to it. In the 2 last weeks of the elections, they could not comment. They didn't know what to say because they knew that we found this key that they just didn't know what to do. But I think the magic of it was that we tapped into the feeling that people had in Poland, that they were tired. We were tired of protesting. We were tired of screaming. We were tired of hearing all of the insults towards us. But in a way, we will get that anger, and we will screw your lives, and we'll get those bastards out of office. And that's what happened on the 15th of October. The general elections came, and people stormed the election polls. Like, they were waiting in lines for hours and hours just to leave that vote. 75% of young people went to vote. 70 even more percent of women went to vote. It was insane. Like, it was like I've never seen anything like this in my life, and I will never forget that. And I will never forget how on the evening of that day we were sitting with my friends, and we were waiting for the results, scared as hell. And then they came at 9 p.m. and the democratic opposition parties won by a landslide. And I sobbed. I wept, I cried, I screamed, we jumped. We were so happy. It was incredible. Because we knew that against everything, like, we somehow convinced the people to, like, give politics a chance again, to open the doors for something new. And then came the next morning, and the next morning, and the next morning. And in the coming weeks, we had the right-wing government was trying to still, like, get some more power. They were delaying the transition. They were delaying the swearing of the new democratic coalition. And so we were obviously very scared that maybe, again, something bad will happen. But then the new coalition was sworn in. They started, working. And I started waking up in the morning, and I felt miserable. And we've been talking, and we've been given so many workshops, and, like, all of these Zoom calls we've had with people from around the world, including some of you here, about how to, build the resistance, get autocrats out of office. Like, we've heard it all, but no one has ever told us anything about that morning when you wake up and you're hit by the realization that things are not changing, that the dreams you've had, that the visions of the change that you were putting your whole life for, that they are not being delivered even by the good guys, by the smiley ones, by the ones that have been your friends when the bad government was in office. No one teaches you what to do when you go to the parliament and you meet some of the representatives of the new coalition, and they give you the same patronizing look that the previous ones gave you. No one teaches you what to do when you go to a big media in Poland to establish journalists, not the previous ones, the governmental ones, the normal good journalists, and they grill you, and they insult you, and they attack you, and they ask you whether you eat mango, because if you do, that's a hypocrisy, because mango is not safe for the climate, Or when they ask you, like, that, and when they tell you that it's ridiculous to, be so angry about abortion still not being legal in our country, like, you need to give them time. No one prepares you for this. No one tells you what to do. And that's been, frankly, the reality for me for many weeks and months after the elections, when we have been seeing the change, and we've been seeing how many institutions were being transformed, how many of our friends from the civil society were suddenly disappearing from the resistance and heading into the ministries and having very well-paid good jobs suddenly, and forgetting about their friends from the movement. And I think what was the most challenging for me was when activists from Wschód would come to me and would ask me, like, Domi, so, like, what do we do now? And I could not answer them because I did not know. I didn't know, you know, they would ask me, but what do you think about this new government? Like, what do you think about the ministries? Like, the climate ministry is good, right? The workers ministry, like, there are some good things happening there. And I would say, on one hand, sure, but there was this, you know, the transformation we envisioned was so much greater than what the guys in the offices, even the good ones, could give us. And very lately, maybe not. I will take it back. I think right now I am in the moment of accepting that big breakthrough that we led, those big achievements that we've had for the past years, that they were only the beginning of our fight. I am only now accepting that the struggle that is ahead of us is so much bigger than I thought it is. I am only now accepting that we have just achieved a tiny bit of change that is needed for all of our people to live in decent and safe conditions. And so I am accepting it. I don't think I've accepted it yet. I still have my little mental health diagnosis that's not solved. But we're trying. We're trying. And I have much more questions than I have answers. And so I will not, unfortunately, tell you, like, this is the recipe for transition. Because I think transition is exactly about that. It's exactly about those millions of questions you have after you know that some things have changed, but there's so many more to come and to win. I have some intuitions, and we have some, I guess, like small bits of direction. One is that we are working on what's called the Plan for Generations. It's like we decided with the movement that we need to really understand what is it that we want to achieve. What is the Poland that we really want to win? And so we've been, putting, and we've been doing this as like 17, 18-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds. So like it's not like a very official strategic document from the government. Like we're talking about the Google Doc in which we write all of the different ideas we have, from taxing the rich to redistributing wealth to the most disadvantaged to making sure public transport is in every province to getting our healthcare systems on the right track. Like we are just putting everything, all of the dreams that we have, we're putting it there because we realize that the new coalition will not make our dreams come true, but at the same time, we cannot just focus on them. We need to actually know what are those dreams before someone decides to steal them. And so we've been working on this. It's not ready yet, but I really hope that soon, in the coming weeks and months, it's going to be ready. And the second thing is that in the meantime, we continue to grill, to confront, and to, if needed, protest the new politicians. And I think it is absolutely essential. We do not give them the trial period. Like, if they told the whole nation that they are the alternative to the bastards that we've had before, they need to prove that they are the real alternative. And we're not going to just be like waiting and say like, okay, guys, like we're keeping our fingers crossed. We'll give you like, 4 years of trial period. Like, no, we're protesting, we're confronting them, we're being very uncomfortable to them. And we're showing to the rest of the public that we cannot just sit back and relax. Like now it's not the time to sit back and relax and wait, because that window of opportunity of really pushing for a big transformation of our country is now, and we need to really squeeze that opportunity. And the third thing is that we are building coalitions. We're really connecting with the people who are still so angry and so dissatisfied as we are. We're talking with the miners who are unjustly fired from their coal mines without any alternative workplace. We're talking with the farmers who now strike against climate action. We're trying to work out how to talk with them. We're talking with the nurses. We're talking with workers. We're talking with feminist organizations. We're talking with, obviously, with our group, so like young people, through TikTok, through social media. And it's not perfect. I feel like it doesn't make full sense to me yet. And I think we're still figuring out exactly what's the next step for us. But I know, first of all, that we are needed. And second of all, I know that we will figure it out. Like that story of what's ahead of us, it's in us. We just need to find the right words to speak it, to say it loud, and then to organize people around it, and then to win it. And to finish off, I had this thought in the morning today that, you know, there were days this year and last year after the elections where I felt miserable beyond anything I know. And I felt like, okay, maybe I should just like drop stuff and just not do this work and give up and quit. But then this morning I thought that, you know, I cannot quit yet, and I do not want to quit. And I really would love, I think it's my aspiration to still be coming to gatherings like that when I'm your age. I think that I wasn't supposed to. That's a way bad way to put it. You're not old. You're wonderful. Oh my God. No. I take it back. I'm sorry. That was not what Yeah. That's what I meant when I said I'm not funny in that like laughtivism workshop, because I'm unintentionally very bad sometimes. That's not what I meant. What I meant was that I think, obviously, like you're older than me. You're not like all these. Oh yeah, okay, we have an exception in the room. I think what I meant is just, let me finish, okay? I have a point. What I meant is that I know you have been through so many struggles, so many tough moments, so many moments of victory and so many moments of failure, of defeat. And for some goddamn reason, I don't know what it is, you're still here. I've been doing this for almost 5 years. You have come through a much longer journey than I did, and you're still here. And for some reason you didn't quit. And there's something that keeps you here. And I want to know what it is, and I want to have it desperately. Because I cannot be feeling this miserable the way I felt lately. And I still want to, keep that sense of direction and hope and energy to do this thing the way you have it. Not in an ageist way, obviously, but in a very loving and, in a very loving way, I mean that. And I will end it here. Thank you.
I'm like Dominika. I love being here in the presence of you senior activists. Thank you very well. I mean, it's a proof that it's very inspiring story, from mass mobilization to victory to challenging world leaders. I wouldn't call them leaders, but they happen to be there, to the beautiful story of Poland. A lot of similarities, different struggle, different countries, but a lot of similarities. Transitions being a result of a revolution or election that are well prepared for. It is challenging, very challenging. As we said, they do leave very decayed system that's really hard to make the change from the inside. And when she was talking about the women, the Polish women, I remember the Sudanese women. The Sudanese revolution was a women-led revolution. The Iranian women, the Lebanese women, the Egyptian women. Women always take to the front line, and they always suffer the consequences of dictatorship and oppressive regimes. And what's happening in Sudan now. Women are in the front, they are the first, they're there. They're really suffering, carrying the burden, trying to protect the families, trying to protect themselves with the sexual abuse. And so the reason I'm wearing this is to honor the Sudanese women in my country, because it was a women-led revolution. And also to honor all women around the world and around the globe, struggling and fighting for freedom and fighting for change. Okay, different stories of transition. I would invite our next keynote speaker, who would have a very different views, because he was inside. He was the Prime Minister of North Macedonia, a Nobel Peace Prize nominee, a reformer, and he will tell us the story from the inside. Mr. Zoran Zaev.
Thank you very much. It was great pleasure really spending these few days with you, and pleasure to meet all of you and admire your history of fight, what you have it. I want to thank you, Canvas and Slobodan and everybody who invite us because it's a really rare occasion to talk about experience and share some experience, what you have it, with persons and people like you. I'm Zoran Zaev. I'm from North Macedonia, and I'm one of the I was one of the leading activists and leading person of I Protest and colorful revolution in North Macedonia. After that came this prime minister. What is kind of different things what's happening in our country. That was the time when we fight for freedom and democracy, and was after that time you need to implement that freedom and democracy, and I will try to share some experience connecting with that. This is the most important and leading persons in our colorful revolution. Of course, a lot of them were also with us all these difficult times. North Macedonia is a 2 million citizens in the heart of the Balkans, ex-Yugoslavian republic, Southeastern Europe, multi-ethnical country, multi-religion country, multi-cultural country, and it's not easy to manage with all these differences in the country. I mean, like persons, not only like politicians. After 1991, ex-Yugoslavia was break down, and we decide in a referendum to become a democratic country, to develop parliamentarian democracy and market economy. And we go further in this path. Unfortunately, 2008 came a regime in our country from a right-oriented party, leading by Nikola Gruevski, the leader of Vamaro Dapamane. It's the biggest right-oriented party in North Macedonia. And that momentum was reasons for preparing the big rallies, big civil movements, protests all around the country. And that was the time when was a lot of people under danger, journalists in prison, businessmen lose own companies, activists and university teachers was punished, detained, and put in the prison. There was complete control of media. There was complete control of public administration, who was, by the way, completely partisan administration. There was complete control of our economy. There was no freedom, everybody afraid, and of course all of that was reason for people to arise and to start a protest in our country. I was that time mayor of my hometown. It's a small town of 40,000 people. Municipality Strumica is 55,000 people, southeast of the country, near to Greek border and Bulgarian border. And of course, I try to participate and share my courage, together with all of them, and to stop it, the regime, and to raise our voice, and to be loud, and to send a strong message to the government that is not expected way what the citizens want to live it in North Macedonia. Few persons around a leading person, Nikola Gruevski, the prime minister, since 2006 till 2017, 11 years, was actually capture the government, capture the state completely. Few of them controlled Ministry of Finance, Interior, security agencies, and completely media and everything in the country. Starting with that, we try to join forces, all of us, and it's not easy like politicians, because I was a mayor and one of the leading persons in the biggest opposition party, Social Democratic Union of Macedonia. How to join with civil activists, with regular people, with academic community, with some independent, very rare independent journalists, go together. Because the trust to the politicians is very low, everywhere, also in that part of the world. So we define a few criteria how we will act together. We agree on three basic criteria, and that was crucial to provide the base for rising. First, that the colorful revolution is non-violent movement. Second, that the movement's goal is to overthrow Gruevski regime in Macedonia. And three, that this is participatory model, that no one has a monopoly over the movement. And we try to understand each other, and we try to appreciate each other, because there was a lot of risk. I was personally arrested, a lot of journalists was arrested all these years, and the regime grew during the years. And we started the biggest rally, what you see here. The biggest one was in 17th of May 2015, more than 100,000 people, leading by the civil society. We, like politicians, was participant in the 17 line there in the back, because they need to lead that. They need to encourage the people, because they was really those who encourage the people go out and protest, not politicians, because politicians will lose the trust of the people all these years. As I mentioned it, the regime started to be visible 2008, and that big rally happened in 2015, in 17th of May. Of course, the main speakers was activists, civil society organizations, and a variety of persons important from our society. During all this time was not easy, because the regime used the regime police. They arrested a lot of people, put in prison. They threatened to the children, to the families, and it was really scary. But having in mind all discussions here, we have one very big luck. We find a crack in the regime, and we use that for fighting against the regime, continuing with non-violence tools, with a lot of patience, with blockaging of all streets in the capital of North Macedonia, Skopje, but all around the country also. And the crack was, we, together with few very courageous persons, we steal illegal wiretapping materials under 20,000 people in North Macedonia. They was under surveillance, under wiretapping, non-legally, of course, more than 10 years. And they bring it to us, because it was very problematic who will announce that, how will we manage with these resources, to the opposition party. In the meantime, during the years, I became a leader of the biggest opposition party, Social Democrats. And of course, I take it responsibility, and I personally announce 35 we call it political bombs, where the people saw the whole criminal activities, completely destroyment of civil rights in our country, and really the worst things what can happen in every country, and especially in so-called democracies. So revealing or announcing all these 35 political bombs every third and every fourth day, that give more and more arguments to the activists to be more courage, to go further, and to continuing the fight. We success to put the government for negotiation at that time, and they accepted all our conditions. That means new public prosecutor, new management of the public broadcaster, our national television, the technical minister for interior when elections happen 100 days before, a technical minister coming from opposition and from the organizations together, who will be also minister for social care, and 3 deputy ministers for agriculture, administration, and finance, to have a chance to control and to have a chance to fight regime in a democratic way through the elections. And we success. 2016, 11th of December, there was elections. We win in these elections. And of course, we have it majority to change the government. So after 2 years of the protest, because the biggest rally, biggest protest, biggest movement was happened 2 years, after 1 year, we started using these wiretapping non-legal materials. And of course, after 1 year of expiring, of sharing these materials to the public, we success in the election to win the government. What I mentioned it, we together with social activists, with society and social organizations, with a lot of independent persons. And we call it that we struggle and we win against the regime with vote and with pencil. And that was our proud after that. But of course, after that, also a lot of obligation came. In the government, there was invitation, and a lot of activists accept to take responsibility in some institutions, like those who are check and balance, audit institutions, or anti-corruption institution, or anti-monopoly institutions, human rights institutions, etc., etc. But some of them take it also responsibility to be ministers in the government, managers of the very important institutions, because there was obligation now how to fulfill these promises, what we give it to all these courageable people who was in front of the regime and fight. So there is some pictures also here move, how we fulfill some of the expectation. I hope a lot of them, but of course that is not by mine to comment. We became NATO member country. That means that we fulfill all democratic criteria. If you need to be NATO member country, it's not only to have good army or prepare soldiers for that. No, it's most important to fulfill all democratic criteria. Of course, we deliver all freedoms of the people, what was not happened before, because all reports during 2008 till 2017 from Reporters Without Borders, with Freedom House, with statement from State Department, European Commission, call it our country, regime, capture state, etc., etc. Officially, in official statements and reports, what's coming in our country. And having that in mind, we also changed the country completely, the behave, what our situation necessary needed. Previously, we was in fight with all our 5 neighbors. We became the first friends with our 5 neighbors. We signed historical agreements after 30 years of the problems with Greece and Bulgaria. One of these agreements changed our name. From Macedonia, we became North Macedonia because Greece have north part of the country, call it Region Macedonia. So we make geographical distinction in a very friendly way. And there was nomination for Nobel Prize because it was a very good tool how the leaders and the states can find solution for difficult issues. And it's not easy to change the own name of the country, only for building friendship, and through this friendship to have a chance to develop democracy and freedom in your country. Of course, there was all awards given for democracy, for peace, for social rights, for all achievement what we made, the new government. There is some awards from Germany, from Austria, from France, from Brittany, from everywhere. But the biggest award for us was, after 30 years, we fulfill the two biggest strategic goals. And that was to be member of NATO. For us means security and stability in this difficult multi-ethnical Balkan. But also, second goal was to start negotiation with the European Union. That means for us more democracy, more freedom, more values, what our citizens expected. And we're continuing in this direction. That we work good in the next 3 years, since 1st of June 2017 till till 15th of July 2020, where the mandate finished for the new government, what was led by me. We also win the next elections in 2020, and I prepare a new government since 1st of September 2020. But when you fight with activists, with regular people for freedom and democracy, you know, it's happened time to implement it practically, this freedom and democracy. So in September 2021, my political party lose local elections for mayors, and I take complete responsibility, and I go with resignation, because that is the democratic way. Somebody need to take responsibility and send the message that politicians must be responsible when they take it. Normally, people vote in the very fair and regular elections, and they decide to change our mayors. So before that, we have it 61 mayors. After that, in 2001, we win only in 17 municipalities. Our opponents win in more than 45 municipalities. That's happened. And of course, that was also a message for believeness in democratic tools and tools for freedom normally, and to give a message to the next leaders to be even more responsible for the future. So having that in mind, my conclusion is first that there is a chance for some transitions, not only because I am politicians, but if the control and monitoring is from the activists, from the people inside of the implementation, have more guarantee for success to not happen regime again. That means that politicians, after the big protest, after the big movements to destroy regimes, take responsibility, because those are from the groups, politicians are from the groups who take responsibility to prepare the government, not activists. Activists only expect to fulfill the goal, to not repeat it regime, to not repeat it autocracy, etc., etc. But our examples show that when they accepted responsibility to lead institutions in the country, it's more check and balances. It's more loudy. They can, from inside, criticize. They can, from inside, to change things, etc., etc. That's happened, and I hope that in the future there will be more and more examples where the fighters for freedom and democracy not needed to be party members, but to participate in own country institutions to change things in a better way. So having that in mind, what that success was not recognized only from us, but from the whole democratic world. And having that in mind, there is a few conclusions what I want to share with you. What was the point out few things what we undermine to remember, to stay forever. So let me point out few lines that should be remembered from our Macedonian color revolution. First, that its idea and essence should be transmitted from generation to generation. That civil movements and resistance are necessary so that a party's ruling class never repeated and deprives citizens of free society and the right to free expression and critical thinking. Second, the colorful revolution showed that government should be afraid of the critical thought of the people and not the other way around. And that is something that takes Macedonia many steps forward in the development of own democracy. And third, the freedoms we have achieved can easily be put at risk again. Civil society, democratic parties, and academia must be on the alert and not allow freedom once won to be captured again. So there was official conclusions and still remain. People repeat it and continuing. So it's a lot of freedoms in our country. It's a very visible democracy, but normally we need to improve it. So always the message is keep fighting, because there is not enough democracy. Never. There is not enough freedoms ever in the world. But also a free world and democratic world also need to do more. So I suggest to Slobo and Srđan, next organization to be with more politicians, existing politicians. Why? Because they must be more practical fighting autocracy. You know, I call it the war in Ukraine. Despite all really harmful informations what we have it's a war of values. Because if the autocrats like Putin win this war, it's a message all around the world that they succeed, that they prevail. And even as you saw, they have growth of own GDP during the war. So the people can believe in these societies, in these countries, in these organizations of the systems. What honestly, nobody wants to live without freedom, without democratic right to talk, to fight for what you believe. So it's a huge failure what's happened in the last wars in Ukraine, also in Gaza, everywhere, because the democratic world and the democratic leaders doesn't succeed in the third decade, in the 21st century, to stop and to prevent the war and that of a lot of women, children in these regions where the war happened. Our region, Balkan, is like temping bomb, always, because of multi-religion, multi-ethnicity, multi-culture. You know, we fight a lot of wars, and after ex-Yugoslavia, a lot of people die. Now the children of these people are grown up, and it depends if we can continue to focus them to NATO and European Unions, where is democratic values, or to motivate them to take rifles and go in the mountains. It depends of how the region will organize themselves again. But having that in mind, the final message is there is, of course, there is, we need to be satisfied sometimes even with some partial success, and keep it this partial success for the future success, what we needed to achieve it. But it's not enough only to protest. I appreciate very much the whole risk what the people take it to protest against autocrats, authoritarian regimes, against general regimes. There is a different kind of regimes normally, and I appreciate the courage what they have it. It's easy for the politicians. They have party members behind, they have some instruments, etc. But regular people, activists, young people especially, they risk whole life and whole future, and even risk own family for that. And it's really something what the world can count it and to encourage for the future. And of course, it's always the message to take care with whom you work and how you get guarantees with those with whom you work during fighting the weaknesses of the system normally, and not be satisfied only with some kind of guarantee. Be a guarantor inside. After that, of the implementation of the expectations of the movements, of the groups, and of the people. So was great pleasure for me sharing that kind of experience from some politician who came here to join you. And I try to learn from you, because I'm not anymore politician, and I will never be any more politician. I will continue to be activist normally, because it's a character of the person. I have honor to be prime minister of my country 4 years, 3 years and 10 months actually. But of course, I put one step together with my fellow activists in all these protests, in our colorful revolution, etc., etc. So the future politicians need to upgrade it and go further. Thank you very much for your attention.
Oh, thank you. I want to start off by saying thank you to UVA and to Canvas for bringing all of us here together. It's really an honor to be with all these brilliant academics and these really courageous activists. It's an honor to be speaking about my country and sharing my story. I'm a very nervous public speaker, so please bear with me and allow me to refer to my notes. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Myanmar today. And if you've heard about Myanmar at all in the global news, it's probably not about our breathtaking landscapes or our rich cultural heritage. It's probably about our long struggle for democracy against a really brutal, murderous military regime. And another fun fact I'll share with you is that we are home to the longest ongoing civil war in the world. It's against the ethnic militias, against the Burmese army, which is made up of the dominant Bama or Burman ethnic majority group. And although it sounds like I'm about to tell you a lot of miserable things, and I do have a lot of miserable stories, but I believe my message today here is one of hope. The last coup has really presented us with this very unique opportunity, and we're all coming to realize that, because for the first time in almost 80 years, we have a real chance of pushing the military out. So for some context, on February 1st, 2021, we all woke up to the chilling news that our civilian leaders had all been rounded up and that there was a coup. The military thought that it was going to be fast and easy, but they had no idea what they were in for, especially when you cut off the internet for a bunch of Gen Zs who are very addicted to social media. It's not a good move. People poured out into the streets. The government workers organized a huge civil disobedience movement, and it really sparked our spring revolution. People were not willing to go back to the dark ages after they had tasted democracy. And of course, as they always do, the military cracked down violently on everyone. They disappeared anyone who made a peep. They killed and arrested our activists. You couldn't even make a Facebook post. And many civilian groups that had been formed to defend their communities inevitably turned violent. Although initially we had started with a lot of nonviolent, very creative nonviolent methods of mobilizing the masses. And rebel armies that had once been seen as, the rebels, the bad guys, they suddenly became our comrades. They took in people fleeing from the military, and for the first time, people realized that they could work together across different political, ethnic, social lines. And our ousted civilian government has formed the most diverse government that we have seen to date in our modern history. And they have promised that moving forward, they would build a federal democracy that's inclusive of everyone. And as you can see, there have been thousands of activists arrested and imprisoned. 2 million people have been displaced since the coup, and these numbers are probably vastly underreported numbers. People are now looking forward to victory because the tide turned at the end of last year in favor of pro-democracy forces. But the thing is that we can't risk becoming complacent like we did in 2011 when we believed that we had won, but the army never really left. We failed to secure the foundations of democracy. We didn't really bring all the key stakeholders to the table. We failed to build these strong coalitions and robust institutions. The military was our puppeteer, and so nobody was held accountable. And now this transition will no doubt be extremely complicated because of all the diverse ethnic armies and groups that we have. There's a lot of longstanding grievances. There is deep-seated distrust among political actors. And now we also have a lot of different armed factions that are popping up. And it's a very complex political landscape with a lot of shifting alliances. And everyone's trying to protect their own interests. So we can't wait until the military is gone to start planning. We need to start planning now to ensure that we have a peaceful and stable transition and to mitigate any further risks of fragmentation, especially when we know that there could be a huge power vacuum once the military is removed. And this is really a rare opportunity for us. It is the historical moment to reshape the future of our country. And now we also see that when we work together, we have a chance to defeat our oppressors. There's also a rising generation of new leaders, new voices. They're eager to establish a new social paradigm. They have new views. They want to heal ethnic divisions, uphold human rights, and have a more equitable future. And as you can see, the people of Myanmar are really resilient, courageous, creative, and they've kept their sense of humor intact throughout these darkest of times. And we really deserve to have the democracy that we have fought for so many generations, that so many of our youth have suffered and died for. So the question is, do we repeat the mistakes of the past, or are we going to learn from them? So I think that to succeed, our leaders really need to start moving beyond revolution and resistance to one of reform and rebuilding. I think we need to take steps to establish democratic norms now, and also to make sure that we're collaborating with a full range of stakeholders to ensure that we're building a national consensus and unity, building a shared common future and vision that everyone can stand behind. And I think as we've seen in struggles across the globe, we need to have the foresight to build systems of good governance that ensure accountability and transparency. Because we know that these are the preconditions for a stable peace, lasting peace. It's not a result of it. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
All right. A well-deserved coffee break. Please be sure, be here at 11. You have 22 minutes. Coffee break. Okay. Cool. We are to continue our discussion and talks around transition. Now we have a great panel, Promises and Pitfalls of Transition. Stories, reflections, and insights from Georgia, Egypt, and Philippines. I will leave our great moderator, John Gold, will introduce the panel, and the floor is yours.
Hello? Yeah, okay, hi, you can hear me. Okay, great, fantastic. Hi, I'm John Gould. I'm a professor of political science from Colorado College, and for about 20 years I've been teaching courses in political science, but of course for the last 15 years I've been teaching with Slobodan Jinovic and Sergej Popovic a course on waging nonviolent conflict. Today we're going to be talking about transitions, movements in transitions, and we've been asked to look at the challenges that movements face at that moment of victory when they have a democratic opening. And to set it up, I wanted to start off with a clip from Pixar, and you've probably all seen it, Finding Nemo. A lot of people seen the film. You know, anybody with kids has probably seen it about 30 times. And one of the sub-stories of the subplots of the film is a group of tropical fish are being held captive in a fish tank in a dentist's office. And they're plotting through the movie the whole way through to get out of the fish tank. So they're plotting their escape. And there's this wise old strategist fish, right, who's making the big grand master plan for how they can get out. We can call him Sergej Papa Fish. I think his actual name is Scar or something like that. But anyhow, this fish, Papa Fish, decides on the plan to foul their own tank. They're going to screw up the filter so the tank starts to foul, and then the dentist will come and take them out of the fish tank to clean the tank. He's going to put them in little plastic bags, right? And then the idea is that when the dentist leaves the room for a bathroom break, they're going to roll their bags out of the window, out onto an awning, across a busy road, and into Sydney Harbor for freedom, right? And that's where we are here. And then you skip to the very end of the film, and suddenly you find out the fish have actually pulled off this master plan. So let's take a quick look at the clip. If it doesn't work, I can describe it real quick. There it is. There it is, right there. No? This is called Waiting for Godot, not Finding Nemo. Give me the word and I'll just describe the scene and we can just move on. Okay. Oh no. Okay. Yes, that's right. There we go. Things don't. Well, okay, if. Okay, so today we're going to be describing the now what question and how we as activist fish and movements can get out of our plastic bags and swim back to the reef. And we've had a number of okay, I'll so pretend that's not going on. So, some technical difficulties today, yes.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Anna. Okay, so when we're describing the past plastic bag, and I just want to point out in our bags this weekend, you have all received a copy of Movements in Transition. This was done by the Canvas staff in 2023. And during this time, they interviewed over 20 activists from 12 different countries. And they came up with a number of remarkable insights, which actually kind of describe the plastic bag. So just to get ourselves going there, I just want to summarize some of the major concerns, although they had many, many other concerns that I'm not going to cover. But first of all, the concern of the activists was, how do you maintain that enthusiasm? We already heard Dami talking about this earlier on. How do you maintain the enthusiasm of that moment of transition, that great victory, where you sleep for 3 weeks and wake up and say, everything's going to be great, and then you're like, now what? All right. Second question is, what major institutional reforms, both economic and political, do you need to undertake in order to make this a sustainable, lasting, just democracy? Right? Third, what do you do with the holdovers from the old regime? They're entrenched in politics, they're entrenched in economics, they're entrenched in culture, right? And they're also going to be delivering through the new free media and freedom of assembly and all those rights that you are now giving them that they never gave you. They're going to be delivering new narratives, justifying why they're in place and why you don't belong to be there. How do you fight that fat battle of rhetoric, right? And then finally, what do you do about the groups that have been marginalized, right? Ethnic, religious, and sexual or gender minorities who have been silenced and minoritized or even targeted under the old regime. How do you incorporate them into the new politics? So these are just some of the basic questions. So what I'm going to do is turn it over to our panel today. And we have 3 transitions: Philippines, Georgia, and Egypt. And if you know, all 3 of them have had troubled trajectories. And we'll talk about those troubled trajectories. But I wanted to start off the first question. We'll go about 5-7 minutes with each panelist. And the first question is, what were the major challenges in your country that you experienced during this now what moment? And maybe we could start off with Cecilia.
Sure. So hi, everybody. I'm Cecilia. I'm an activist. I was a member of the National Council of a multi-sectoral organization and party called Akbayan, responsible for organizing and mobilizing and coordinating in Metro Manila. I'm an academic. I'm also a political scientist by training. The movements in transition piece that's in all of your packages, I wrote that. I write mostly on democratization and autocratization processes. And I've been a Canvas trainer for almost 15 years. So in the Philippines, as Nato very nicely, despite despite the context explained for us yesterday, we had a military dictatorship for 21-ish years in the 70s and 80s, 69 to 85, 86, a period of procedural democracy. We had the original people power revolution that was inspirational to a lot of movements around the globe. So our a dictator, Marcos, was ousted after essentially 1 million people overtook the capital city on a period of 4 days in a completely bloodless revolution. Very troubled democratic history, and then in 2016, after what we thought was a period of relative stability, Rodrigo Duterte won the presidency and engaged in a campaign of widespread violence. We estimate that approximately 20,000 people were killed in a period of 6 years. And now the son of the former dictator, Marcos Jr., is now the president. So I a lot of stuff went wrong, obviously. I want to focus on sort of 3 themes that are important lessons from our transition, things that essentially we should have done better. The first is about framing a narrative. So we spoke a lot yesterday about storytelling, the power of narrative. And we failed to name both the abuses of the martial law period. So even until now, if you open like a textbook of elementary or high school, you will not see that X number of people were killed. You will not read about the corruption during the Marcos times. You will not read about the institutional disintegration. You will read that Marcos was president from 69 to 86, period. And this directly led to the fake news that Nado was talking about, this myth of a golden period, of martial law being a golden period. But we also failed to frame what democracy means. We fell into this a trap that I think a lot of our countries, especially following what in the academy we call the third wave of democracy, the way that democracy was really conceptualized by a lot of international democracy promotion and aid organizations in the 90s and 2000s of democracy as elections, full stop, as if that's enough. We failed to make democracy something deeper than the pageantry of elections. Second, there was a lack of fundamental change in resource allocation and the quality of governance. So again, Nado spoke yesterday about how the average time for a case to be resolved in the justice system is 6 years in the Philippines. So somebody murders your brother, it's gonna be 6 years before that person is maybe prosecuted. And so, does anybody here like Game of Thrones? There was this description of all the big families and like whether it's Stark or Targaryen or what's the other one? Yes, they're just different spokes on a wheel that turns. Sometimes one is on the top, sometimes another is the top, and it's all crushing the people. That's Philippine democracy. It's a rotating club of elites, but the quality of life of the average person isn't super different. And so when a figure like a Duterte comes, when a figure like a Marcos comes back, it's easy to sell this post-truth that we can make your life better because people don't understand what democracy is except for the pageantry of elections. Can I eat it? Can I feed my family with it? Can I clothe my kids with it? And third thing that I want to bring up is the new strategies of this new sort of generation of authoritarians, where we have some countries where it's the old way, it's coups, it's military occupation, but increasingly we're seeing these guys, and they are overwhelmingly guys, destroy democracy by using democratic institutions. And so I'll stop there.
I'm Nini Gogi-Beridze from Georgia. I don't like to call myself an activist because I think I'm more an active citizen than a proper activist in a struggle on a daily basis. I'm a senior legal professional with many years of experience in planning and implementing judicial and other type of legal reforms in my country. To just name a few of them, reforms that brought jury trials to Georgia, extended legal aid service, juvenile justice system, and many more. I became a student activist in my early 20s. Now I'm 43 years old. And I met Slobo and Serja in 2002, actually, which does feel ancient, to tell you the truth. But I was born in a Soviet-occupied Georgia, and I stayed because Georgia regained its independence only in 1991. Our country, for past 2.5 centuries, has been primarily occupied by Russia in its form of Tsarist empire, followed by a very short period of independence, and then Soviet Russian Empire. In 2003, it was a miracle type of rose revolution that happened in Georgia. It was not a coup, it was electoral victory of opposition, and it was not fair elections. We just ended up bringing more people to the polling stations to prove that the elections were stolen. There was this period of incredible reforms that happened. Georgia was a failed state. We didn't have electricity. We had shortage of food. Our inflation, like in Zimbabwe, was like skyrocketing. Like we had like money which was very similar to you know, like paper money. It was like changing every week. So I mean, out of failed state, we managed to build a democracy, relatively decent democracy. And all of a sudden, once our reforms were, you know, skyrocketing and portraying our country back to international arena, and embedding Georgia into Western-style democracy, everything that you see now that is happening to Ukraine happened to Georgia. Georgia was invaded by Russia in 2008. We had a war, short five-day war that we fought. But as a result of this war, 20% of Georgian territory is occupied by Russia, even up to date. But the rest of Georgia, after the elections of 2012, is also occupied by Russian oligarch. And his party, which is ironically called Georgian Dream. As I speak today to you, actually 27 minutes ago, my fellow citizens of all ages, and including youth and Gen Z, are demonstrating in capital Tbilisi against Russian-style foreign agents law. We have elections coming up in October 2024, this year. So there is a hope, which I hate this word, I have to admit. There is a plan that if we again bring more people to the election, who will vote against the current regime, we might win again. Yeah, that's right now.
Hi, my name is Ahmed Samih Farag. I'm just a normal Egyptian citizen. Usually I don't book problems, but problems books me. As long as I can manage, I didn't go to jail except for 2 days. And I think this is the smartest thing in my generation. A lot of people serve in jail more time, which is, in my personal calculation, think it's a big failure for many reasons. Jail is not a happy experience at all, even in the United States of America or Sweden. Second, jail take a lot of your energy, take a lot of your dreams, and make you think how to save yourself. So anybody in the rooms, especially the Z generations, going to jail is not a big A, it's a big F. Don't go to jail. I've been seeing a lot of activists, follow-up activists, who went to this experience and terribly been affected on a mental personality, on the smartness, on the view to the whole world. It's not a good experience. So that's number one. Number two, thank you very much for yesterday. It was beautiful, the music, the vibe. I didn't have that fun for a long time with a crew of people similar to me. Number three, some of my ideas are not going to make many of you are not happy, because I'm not a leftist, I'm not ideological, I'm a capitalist, and I'm seeing a very direct liberal capitalist, and I'm seeing a very direct connection between democracy and capitalism. The only government in the world supporting democracy, including this activity, is a capitalistic government for a very specific reasons. If there is no capitalism, there is no democracy, and if there is no democracy, there is no market. So I'm talking about economy because economy is very important, because usually we started to start the movement with big hopes. And here I have to then make a difference between hope and dream. I think hopes are very dangerous things. Dreams can be materialized. You can take your dream, put it on a wall, start to thinking how to make it happen. Hope is a very fluffy thing. You cannot catch it. And it makes you very confident that something big will happen. Eventually, you end in jail. Part of the game, somebody been using the word game, I think, the young lady from the Poland in the morning, she was mentioning the game. The game, all these games in Burma, Egypt, Sweden, whatever, it's about resources, it's about economy. President Sisi don't want to just have the power because he likes the power, because it's good. No, because it's very, very profitable. Beyond your imagination. Billions of money under a signature of a one person. A prime minister here can tell us that. And there is two kinds of government. A government think to make this resources for the people, and the government think to take these resources from the people. And democracy is the main balance between the both. If you manage that to bring a government, give the resources to the people, that's a successful government. Everything else is politics. It's like football. You like this team, I like that team. You like this ideology, I like this ideology. But if you put your eyes away from economy, benefits, money, how we are going to make sure things will work the second day, what's next, Nemo, then you're digging a big failure or some of your friends' graves. And here, I'm literally talking about other people's graves. The game is a very dangerous game. You are competing with the people, with your dreams, who have a strategy. Most of them or studied in the military schools, academies, military strategies, or they're using consultants who study military strategies. You cannot go with the dreams and the small, beautiful ideas fighting military strategies by bringing people to the streets. Good, but not enough. Why? Because I've been in the streets. Thousands of people behind me. When you say something smart, they don't listen. When you say something extreme, they follow you with no eyes. However, the educational background, the local identity, the class they're coming from, when human gathering, they are different. And when more and more people you manage to bring, it's harder and harder to control this big crowd, more than you imagine. Sometimes can be easily your way to lose everything. So you need to be very realistic about what you are going to tell to the people. And the last thing you want to do is to be in the streets and people behind you massively with the great hopes while you have a great dream and you have nothing to give. Then slight extremist person will come with the extremist idea, harm your dream, but full with hope, and sabotage everything. When we've been discussing this 2 or 3 days ago, I think Cecilia said something about our mistakes. Part of our mistakes is the ego. We create a lot of ego. Not only us, we are just humans. But when the people put you, the cameras, the media, the embassies, the internationals come and talk to you, you start to feel yourself something. You're nothing. You're just another human. But you have a power of the people. The power of the people is shifting easily. So you cannot capitalize only on the power of the people because it's changing. People get bored, people get angry, people get hungry, and people wanted to live their life normally. So they can follow you 1, 2, 3 weeks, but not 1, 2, 3 years. People are dangerous. The last thing is solutions. People like us who usually have great dreams, they wanted to make solutions out of these dreams, and this is usually not realistic because it's not realistic, it's not doable. So what they do, they stick to the dreams and forget about compromises. Compromises is very important. You don't do compromises, you lose the people behind you, you go to jail. So this is basically what, know your enemy. There are plenty. Some of them next to you on the podium.
Sorry.
He's a good guy.
Okay. Yeah, I was giving him the time look. Yeah, so let's move on to my next question, which is to focus a little bit on kind of institutional design at the moment of transition. Cecilia mentioned a little bit about the problem of institutions, the overemphasis that we had in the 1990s and early 2000s on just mere elections. But we've also seen over the last 10, 15 years that even with great democratic institutions, would-be authoritarians and authoritarians have been extraordinarily able to colonize those institutions. And of course, getting back to what Ahmed was just saying, if you can kind of colonize the institutions, you can also colonize the economy, which is really essentially what it's often all about. So I just wanted to throw this out. What would be your suggestions, given this history of, from each of your countries, for that moment of institutional design? And is it as much as, is there really any institutional formula, or do we go with our former prime minister and saying you just really have to always be vigilant? You always have to be in the faces, as Domi was saying earlier on, of the politicians of the power speaking truth. And I'll just throw that out, and whoever would like to go first.
Yeah, I think you must always be vigilant, and that's really part that goes into institutional design, is that you can never write the perfect institution without accompanying norms, as of course Levitsky and Ziblatt would tell us, but also without built-in mechanisms for accountability, right? We have elections. Our elections are free and fair. People are voting for Duterte. People are voting for Marcos. But elections don't fulfill the accountability purpose, okay? In our context, and certainly in a lot of contexts around the world. Parties are not fulfilling the purpose of distilling demands from the people. They're telling the people, you have this choice and this choice, and that's it. And that's a failure. So when we think of institutions, I think that it's putting the purpose behind the institution, the norm that drives it, the value that drives it, and holding that to be more important than the way that it's written, if that makes sense. And we've certainly seen by especially this new crop of authoritarians, the very effective use of lawfare, of distorting the written word to make it to make the institution conform to their purposes instead of the purposes of what we value as popular democracy.
Yeah, I think one major success of post-Soviet Georgian story is building institutions, and post-Rose Revolution definitely. I mean, in 2003, as I mentioned before, Georgia was a failed state. My colleagues from Ukraine, from Belarus and from Russia will know that, for example, our patrol police was taking bribe just for nothing, or our teachers were paid bribes in order for us to get to the university. Everyone was like doing and getting bribes, so bribery was just like a form of living. It was not. It was a normal thing to do at that time. So. One thing that we as movement leaders did was to put together 10 points or 10 ideas or 10 steps towards vision of better Georgia, or vision of tomorrow, as we like to call it in our Canvas curriculum, how we should improve our country. And it included a wide range of institutions, including, let's say, judiciary, or a taxation system, or liberalizing law enforcement institutions, or decentralizing the governance structures, etc. But in the beginning phase of post-revolution Georgia, Rose Revolution Georgia, we had this honeymoon phase where you have all the leverage and all tools to implement all these painful reforms. But at some point in this course, you also abuse your power. I've never been a public servant, nor have I been in any parliament or in any form of political party, but it's really, really hard to do politics. As Zoran mentioned, you need to, contain yourself in the realm of, political checks and balances. And while it is absent, and while you are still trying to build institutions, you fail to do so. I think looking back, the most important thing that we failed to do is, Domi mentioned it this morning, is that a lot of our friends who were in civil society moved to the political elite. And we totally forgot that we need to build up another civil society altogether, because all of them moved to political elite. So we failed to do that. We failed to be vigilant, I suppose.
Yeah. I'm coming from a country right now. Since 2013, we don't have any municipality elections. Egyptian municipality is a huge election system. People supposed to elect like 54,000 candidates to be members in every local village municipality. The main reason behind that is the military don't want people, opposition or non-opposition, know how the state works from inside. The statecraft is totally different than being a politician. This is two other things. Having a computer is quite different than how the computer is working. Having a PlayStation is quite different than how a PlayStation is working. You wanted to make money, you need to know how the computer is working. Having a political party is quite different than how the politics should work. When you pick up the stick, when you pick up the carrot, when you raise your demand, and when you bring back your flags. Statecraft is something I think Canvas need to teach people, although with the military strategy, clear plan military strategy. Otherwise, we're bringing thousands and thousands of people to the streets with no solutions because we don't know how to solve the problems, because we don't understand the logic how the governments work. The governments work as it is in small city in China, as it is here in the United States. The government is a government. A formula of people, group of people, got the power some way, and they have the right to make decisions by the name of all of us. Coming from a communist party or coming from the Democrat or Republican, still the same. This is the basic understanding of how the government working. Bringing down a government is easy, very easy. We did it in Egypt 2 times, and we help our friends in Sudan to do it. Running a government is impossible. Very hard. Criticizing a government, articles, news, video, campaigning, very easy. Making a government plan works, not easy. So here we learn half of the way how to bring down a government. Very rare chances to learn how to run a government. In a country like my country, I advise clearly, wisely, younger generation, if they don't have the chance to run for elections, they go and do businesses, small businesses. Not just because will give them more bucks to make a living, no, because it will give you the chance to deal with the humans normally, but as a service provider. Government is a service provider at some point. And then, like my friend Sharif today was telling a story, very funny story. Sharif was working with one international organization supporting journalists everywhere in the world. So one of the requests he received from Gaza that there is no food. Journalists in Gaza has no food. Sharif worked his team hard to manage to get them the food. After 2-3 days, the first message he received that the rice was not cooked enough. Sharif is a government providing a service, or an activist providing solutions. But if there is voting, they will vote no for Sharif because the rice was not cooked enough. Same thing with the government.
I want to get some questions, get the questions from the audience relatively quickly, but I just have one quick round question to ask you. What is one takeaway? I mean, if you're talking to the next generation of activists for their very own Now What movement, I know you all have a lot to say about how you hold a government accountable, how you bring about that moment, but for that now what moment when you've just succeeded, what would be your one major piece of advice? And number two, just given the histories, we have, Marcos to Duterte and Marcos, we have, Shevardnadze to Georgian Dream, and we have, Mubarak to Sisi in just 4 years. Given these kind of roundabout trajectories, do you think that those democratic movements, those democratic openings were a success on hindsight? So really 2 questions there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, our struggle is a generational struggle. My grandmother was 70 years old when she was killed by Soviet army who came to Georgia to crash demonstration in '89. I'm privileged to be vocal about, the problems that Georgia has and the problems that we face. And I'm privileged to be standing in the streets of Tbilisi, as well as all other colleagues of mine, or other activists. I mean, activism does not stop when you think it's over. It continues in different forms and different shapes. I mean, between 2003 and 2024, I've grown up to be, like a mother and, like a proper wife maybe to somebody. But, life happens in between and things change. So you change your way you do activism. Like, for example, in the beginning of Russian-Ukraine war, a lot of our activism was about helping Ukrainians to, survive the initial several days of war, or trying to, bring them out, etc. There are different ways how you can be an active citizen, and there is always a chance to, try to build a different reality in your society. It does not stop when you think when you think you won something major, and there is always a new generation coming, and they have their own ways. I mean, here at Canvas, we might seem a bit old, and a bit, tired and overwhelmed with all these things, but what we try is just to give an experience and tools, and try to show that there is always a possibility to go back, try to reshuffle, try to, rethink how this works, and go back to your fight, or pick a different one if you are not successful in that one. So I think that's what's most important, that, the fight continues. Free Georgia will never, for example, free and independent Georgia will never die. Even if I die in this struggle, will never, this idea of bringing Georgia into peace, into like Western liberal democracies, into secure, like system of democracies, it's not gonna die with me. It did not die with my grandma. There is always a next generation who will fight for it.
Yeah, I really like that framing, Nini, and I think that we have to stop thinking about democracy as if it's like a journey in a single direction, right? It's like life. Sometimes you're here, and it's the process. As we learn, the authoritarians learn too, and so we're in this constant battle of how to make stuff better, and sometimes they're on top and sometimes they're on top. 86 was absolutely a victory, as much as like we think that we don't have the democracy that we want, or if we can even call Philippines a democracy now, but 86 was absolutely a victory. It showed us it was the right thing to do at the right time. They changed their strategies and approach, and so now we have to learn to change ours, and we have to learn from the stuff from the past. So, yeah.
It was successful, but successful failure. I'm realistic. very realistic person, and this has affected my life in a good way. A lot of tools we used to have is not in our side anymore. For example, Facebook algorithm is not supporting politics topics anymore. Facebook was the main tool in 2011, the main tool. So we need to figure out something new. Now, to be honest, the differentiation between hope and dream, part of the success. Because if you receive me here 2011, I will talk a lot about the hope, not about the dream. A dream can be materialized to a planning, to strategy, to formalizing, to making things real, not talk. Because you know what? After the 18 days, for 20 days after we ousted Mubarak, we went back home, feel very free. The beautiful 18 days in my life. I will never regret it. I will never say, if I have the time machine, I will go visit it again and again and again, especially in the weekends. But that was not enough, because we came to normal people questions. I've been visiting small village in South Egypt called Abu Rish Aswan, in Aswan governorates. My friends, activists, they are coming from big families. So they prepare the wedding place to make it a political thing. 10,000 old Saidi guys with the Galabiya. Most of them never visited Cairo before. And I'm the smart guy coming from the revolution, tell them how the future looks like. And that's the people. That's the reality. I'm coming with all liberals, democratic, human rights ideas. An old man, big name in the family, stand up and says, my son, he looks very good. I can see that you are coming from a good background. What's next? Exactly like Nemo. So I was realistic. I told him we need 10 years to fix what Mubarak did. And 10 years of hard work from everybody, including you. That's a realistic answer. I could give him a lot of blah, blah, blah. He wouldn't be convinced. When I was realistic and I give him a real time frame, he went happy. He went, oh, okay. We're sitting here, we will do what we can do. Our candidate in that part of the country win massively, because the guy from Cairo was realistic and he just followed being realistic. We don't lie on the people. It's shitty in Cairo, still shitty, but there is one backdoor failure to all these regimes we are trying to fighting. They are sucks when it's come to economy. Very bad. They don't know how to economy do. They understand money is important, but they don't know how to run economy. And that's our golden gates, to win a success again, to bring them down, and to make sure that we create a democracy. Why? Not because democracy is beautiful, happy, fluffy, and we hug each other all the day. No, because economy and democracy works hand in hand till the end. Of course. Of course. Security is a very, if you don't understand how the military, I will tell you one small story. I'm sorry for the time. My friend of 6th of April, I'm a little bit older generation, I'm wiser. My friend of 6th of April, after the revolution, Mubarak is out. 6th of April generation, Ahmed Maher called me on the phone. I know that the phone is tapped. He don't. And he says, well, we got an invitation from the leadership of the military to go to the military headquarters and discuss with them the future. I told them, ask them to meet in a middle ground and bring foreigner friends. We can call whatever ambassador to be part of that, and everybody will be happy to come. Don't go there. Why? Because you go there, you are not equal player anymore. It's negotiation process. Do you know what happened in that meeting? They went out, take a great famous picture. At least 3 or 4 of the people in that picture was very severely challenged by the government. Ahmed Maher himself spent 3 years in jail for nonsense. Why? Because when they came to the room, somebody in the back was taking characteristic, profiling. Who are they? What's the dynamic between them? What we can do? Which one we can divide from the others? President Sisi loves drama, and he thinks that drama is very important. So they control all the media. They buy a lot of the media outlets, independents especially, or they pressure the owners and get it. And they have a huge company with billions of Egyptian pounds to make our own Hollywood. So they came to the point to make ikhtiyar talata, the choice, which is eventually is President Sisi is the choice. And they came and publicized, they mixed the drama with reality. And do you know what they show? They show the videos of the secret meetings between the leader of the military and the opposition leaders. But they meet them individually. And then they start to ask, Sharif, what do you think about Ahmed? Yeah, he's a good guy, but. And then Ahmed go, you know that Sharif, what do you think about Sharif? Sharif is a good guy, but. Yeah, actually the guy is saying a very negative thing about you. And then it's divide and rule. Everyone in that video, Muslim Brotherhood, Bray, not Bray, communist, not communist, everybody was stabbing the back everybody else because they think this is the great golden gate to gain the power. If the military is inviting me here alone, maybe I will be a prime minister, maybe I will be a good guy, and it's my life opportunity, my wife waiting at home with the great news. Everybody was stabbing everybody. They show it after 10 years. It's a big failure for everybody. You know why? Because they didn't unite in the streets, in front of the people, but in the back doors. Because they don't know what the statecraft looks like. They start stabbing because they think, small opportunity is better than nothing. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's turn it to some questions. All right. Yes, I saw the hands go up, but I'm kind of blind. So I got to get my glasses out.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Hi. It's on? Okay. So I'm from Lebanon. My name is George. And I think it's a little bit different because Lebanon, we don't have a dictatorship. We have several dictators represented by political parties. And people vote intentionally for these parties because the system is based on fear. People vote for the sectarian parties because they need them to protect them from the other Lebanese Muslims versus Christians. So during the revolution, what happened is that finally we managed to convince some of the people to vote differently. And 10% of the new parliament is independent candidates from the revolution, which was positive. The problem is that people are waiting to see what these people are going to do. And the system is so corrupt that we cannot possibly do what we promised people to do. And I'm sure in the next elections, people will not vote for the independent because they gave them the opportunity and then they failed. So my question is always elections and presenting to politics the way for change, or maybe we need to focus on other things, maybe the corruption institutions first, or telling people how to hold leaders accountable, because we always focus on toppling the regime and replacing people in the parliament. Maybe there are other ways to change.
Yeah, it's really, really important that it's not just one strategy, right? I'm a big believer in Gramsci. You have a war position and a war movement, right? So my non-leftist friend is laughing at me. So you need people to be in a key position so they can make change from the inside. You still need to maintain this pressure from the outside. So mobilization doesn't stop. Organizing, recruiting, mobilizing doesn't stop once you get people inside the parliament, okay? You need people outside to hold them accountable, but also to show that when I'm a parliamentarian and I cannot negotiate with this asshole from the old system, I need people outside to support me. Okay? So it's not either or, it is all of the above.
Great. Anybody else?
No, I agree. I mean, that's how it works. It also how it works in the nonviolent struggle, because you practically mirror the same techniques once the change happens. I mean, you don't stop there. You continue, or even intensify, those strategies.
I have an answer.
Sorry, go ahead.
If there is something can be changed, if any ideas can be changed by democracy, it would success and be there now. It's not. Humans, that's the best they can make, democracy. Maybe you need to make sure that democracy come with more participation of people. Maybe create systems, make sure that people hold accountable on all kind of levels. But changing democracy with something different, for me, is a mental masturbation. Thank you.
Lots of good metaphors today. Rania.
What?
Could you?
I can be loud. Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Mic or my voice is that?
Whatever.
You're on the mic now.
We feel you.
You all have touched on a very important subject, which is the institutional building in the time of transition. And I have worked on this file myself, civil service reforms and institutional building. It's very challenging. One, the politicians don't understand the importance of that. They think they're in office to do few important things, and they think they can achieve this without working on the institutional building. Two is the circles of corruptions. I mean, we talk about institutional building away from dismantling the deep state. So the corruption circles are still there, and it's not in their favor to actualize any changes. Three, we can't think of the institutions as just institutions. These institutions have policies, procedures, people working, ways of work, processes. So there is a lot of change management we need to do, and people are resistant. It's the nature of any organization. People resist any change coming. And this leaves us with the question that is institutional building a responsibility of a transitional government? Because transitional governments are supposedly, they're here for a short period to ensure that the country is transiting into democracy, whatever, liberal, social, whatever democracy the country is ready to receive. But this leaves us with a question of, it's very important, institutional building is very important to ensure that this are the institute will protect the democracy we want to see. Elections, whatever we want to see. So it's important, we do need to work on an institutional building. From all your experiences, what do you think, who we need to bring to the table to convince them that this file is important and it goes hand in hand with any transitional goal that we have and we want to achieve? So I would like to hear from your experiences, how did you work on that file? and what lessons learned can we take with us to the future. Thank you.
Should I start? Yeah. Yeah. I think it is a very important question, but it must be followed, not followed, but somehow the first question that we need to answer: how do we win? Like, how big of our margin is? If we won by a huge majority, then you have a little bit more leverage time to do the reforms that are painful. For example, when after 2003, Rose Revolution government came to power, they had the mandate to eradicate widespread corruption. That meant very difficult reforms. Overnight, they released 54,000 police officers from the job, everyone. Yes. Not only minister or deputy minister, everyone. And they hired a new cadre of police officers. They fired everyone in their customs because, and they started to rebuild the whole customs system altogether. They deregulated most of the, systems that would feed the corruption, like including, let's say, like entrance examination in universities, etc., etc. So it depends how legitimate you are as, to be in power of doing such reforms. Secondly, and I think Ahmed made it quite clear, you also need to, it is necessary that people start practicing democracy. Like institutions such as self-government, or even like school boards, like basic school boards, in the ones that you care about because your kids are going in those schools, in those public or private schools. You need to start practicing your voice, your choices, and be more responsible citizen, and figure out that it is not easy to make difficult choices. It's not always as black and white as everyone perceives it, like the ones that are not involved in policy or politic making. So I think it is important, two things, combination, the legitimacy and the idea of how much you can get away with in the first phase when you need to do those reforms. And the second one is like giving the opportunity for people to participate in those decision-making processes. As much as I love elections, I think it is even more important to have jury trials, because that's the only way how people are. And Jefferson was the one, actually, the builder of he was in favor of, if I have to choose between, elections and jury trials, I would choose jury trials, because that's the most important place where people exercise actually how jurisprudence is played out, and what is fair and not.
I agree with everything Nini said. I think this goes back to, as we say in Canvas, your vision of tomorrow, right? Our vision, the point of mobilizing, is not to take out so-and-so from power. Taking out so-and-so from power is the way that you get to the tomorrow that you want to see, right? So having that vision just means that you're changing the target of your mobilization, if it's institutional reform or a different leadership, right? How do you get them? How do you convince them? You know how to convince them because you know the way power works. If you're able to get the old regime out, you're able to use those same levers to convince them that you need to undertake this reform, or we'll mobilize in the way that we mobilized before. The worst thing you can do, and this goes back to George's question, the worst thing you can do is, there's new people in power, let's sit back and see what happens.
In Egypt, you touch base on the dismantle deep state. Each system in the world have a central balance. If you really wanted to shake it, you need to find the central balance. If you find the central balance, you can do everything you want, including bringing this deeper officers who appointing a lot of people as a privilege at some point to different positions in the whole government. Out. And intelligence services everywhere in the world is intelligence services. It's only about capacity and budgeting. They work the same way. Some of them are very smart, some of them are very stupid. But the statecraft of this business line is secrecy. And here is the weakness. If you know the secrecy enough, you have a huge card against them. You need to also have a gathering information unit, whatever you're going to call it. Banking like to call it KYC, knowing your client. So, know your client, the citizens, the opponent.
We have 2 questions over here, 3 questions. So far back, and then gentleman in the middle, and then gentleman up front.
Thank you very much, everybody. Especially Ahmed, actually, I agree with you, Ahmed. You know, every point you made.
Thank you, including capitalism.
Actually, I totally agree with the point that, you know, if you are logic, if you are rational, people won't follow you. I got my personal experience, and I'm an activist for 30 years, and we became government, and actually I'm not, you know, a prime minister like my hero over there, but I'm assistant to, you know, the leader of the government. And I know the difference between activism and policymaker, huge difference. And I think, you know, as an activist, it's like playing around with girls. You know, as a policymaker, you are married. You have to think about your daily bread. You have to think about your payment. So it's very limited. You have to think about the reality that you have to face. So that's my comment. And I also want to know about your response to my comment. And moreover, so, and my experience, I said that I'm 30 years in activism and 5 years as assistant to the leader. And I came to realize that, you know, although we try to think about change and government change, but the system is running that way. You know, actually, we like the art. The art is rotating. We just sit on the art and we are rotate the same direction. It is rotating. So rather than making the change, we go along with, you know, the rotation. So my thinking is that, you know, we need more institutional change. And deep down than that, it is like society change. We need government to change, but we cannot expect a lot from government. But we need institutional change, you know, that can carry more weight to make, you know, society change. I mean, that can bring about the real change. That's my experience and my comment. And also, I want to know your comments. Thank you very much.
Do you want to respond to that, or should we go for another question?
I have a response.
Okay, go ahead.
It's my response was coming from the music field. Eminem would never be an Eminem if he's following the rhythm of Snoop Doggy Dogg. You should not dancing on other people's music. You create your own music. You create your own rhythm. You don't follow what the others been doing. That's the mistake, because these circles never end. If you stayed 10 years, 20 years in the same circle, doing the same thing, you'll never be successful. You need to crack this circle, create your own circle, create your own wave, create your own way to serve the people. It's like McDonald's. If you watch that movie, how the McDonald's, starting with creating the system inside the kitchen, because the size of the kitchen and how the people will manage in the kitchen will make less time doing sandwiches means more money for him. You need to think this way. And watch McDonald's, good movie.
I just want to add one thing. I think it is wrong to believe that people don't know what good and bad is. You know, like how, I think they know, and they just lack the practice of it. Like they themselves don't find a place in practicing democracy. That's why I think it is important to encourage them to participate in as many forms as possible, including through variety of means. Because what autocrats usually tell us is that they know better how everything should be run. It's the vice versa. Like People Power Academy is not like simple words. We know better how to run ourselves, and we just need to practice it more often, I think.
I agree with Ahmed that it's a matter of being more ambitious, right? And having the willingness and the drive to do the really tedious work of understanding and naming this facet of this institution, this process isn't functioning to make this government better. So this is how we want to change it, right? Like, I am really, really tired of like our allies getting in government and saying, well, we can't change this because in order to do this, we need to change this law, and then we need to go through this process, and this needs the approval of the assistant secretary and the third secretary, and so do that. Write all that down and do that, and don't like say, but like that's the way that institutional change happens, is by naming the faults in the process. It's really tedious and boring work, but you can't, you know, so many dictatorships entrench themselves by creating really, really complicated and onerous bureaucracies so that you pay them bribes, right? So that's what you have to do away with. And it's tedious and it's boring, but it needs to be done.
Reminds me of that old statement that, you know, for my friends, everything, and for my enemies, the rule of law. Right. Right. Yes, John.
Pardon? Yeah, thank you. My name is William. I need to first thank Canvas for this beautiful conversation. I think we are discussing at the right time that we really need to. One, there are processes that leads to transitional change, which I've not had so much. For example, if you look at Uganda, we are yet trying to fidget whether we may have a change or not. We have a leader that has been there for the last 37 years, and he seems to be determined to go until maybe God says, you must leave. But then something that we forget in terms of our transitional discussion is there are people who start this struggle and they don't finish. They give the mantle to the next. When you look at the country where I'm coming from, there are quite a series of political activists that have been in this journey. What happens to this kind of pillars that makes the struggle to the transition? What discussions do we have with them? But also, I needed the panelists to tell us more about the influence of geopolitics, okay? Because for any transition to happen in any country, there could be allies that are outside, but also the allies that are inside. What discussions do we have with them before we start the struggle, before we start the journey? And what conversations do we carry along the journey up to the last minute when we succeed? Because in many countries, you realize that services are militarized, okay? Or services are demonized. Like in Uganda now, if you want to get services, everything is weaponized. You must either be in the side of the government or you don't get this kind of services. But also we must be realistic that in some countries, democracy seems to be losing essence because it's a struggle. You realize the guys who live on the left hand or with the government, you know, they lead a fair life compared to those who make the struggles every day. Then you also realize that democracy is becoming, you know, more into technology, but also there are countries that do not really enhance the essence of technology. Then also you look at the level of civic competence of the citizens where these kind of transitions take place. To me, I think before we get into maybe bed or into a round table of discussion in terms of transitional realities, there is need for us to have a clear agenda. For example, now where I'm coming from, you have a huge political party called the National Unity Platform, headed by a young gentleman. But also you have another political party called FDC, Forum for Democratic Party, you know, headed now by a retired and old politician. Ahmed knows him, okay? Where do you put the challenge or the reality of these two? For example, if tomorrow we wake up and Museveni is no more, I think another mistake that we do as maybe activists and political actors is we put identity of a personality to live, but not the structural reality of where the governance system is premised on. And I think this is where Canvas needs to give us a space as we discuss or as we walk this journey. Where do we put the structural challenges as we walk the journey, and also the structural realities as we succeed in this journey? I think this is where the whole idea and the concept of transition can best be placed. Otherwise, you know, we will be jumping into accusations, but also it will be more of individual successes and also individual accusations than having it as a structural challenges, but also structural successes. Thank you.
Right, lots to unpack there. Should we? Feel free to chime in anywhere on that.
A lot of questions. What I'll say about geopolitics and the conversations you should start having is to not let your allies, your foreign allies, impose a timeline or conditions on you, okay? Because in Philippines, we have a very, well, first of all, we see in the world, like a lot of times after a revolution, there's a lot of international pressure to have elections right away, whether or not the country is ready. So have your own idea about an elections timeline, what makes sense for organizing, for logistics, before you run into like a haphazard elections. Foreign debt is also a big issue. So in the Philippines, the Marcos dictatorship incurred literally billions of US dollars of foreign debt. And when the democratically elected president took over, she agreed to automatic debt repayment due to pressure from the World Bank. And that put us into a negative financial situation. We're only finishing paying that debt now. And where is that money? It didn't go to services, it's in banks in Luxembourg. So be careful of pressure from your supposed allies.
By contrast, it doesn't have to be that way. Poland negotiated a $20 billion debt reduction in 1989, vastly accelerating its recovery. So it's important to keep the IFIs in mind and be tough with them. Yeah, great.
I mean, geopolitics and history matters. I mean, right now Georgia has a unique opportunity to negotiate, to start negotiations with the European Union, to be a member, and like not very soon, but like in a relatively shorter period of time, which was unbelievable for our country even a year ago. It is due to Ukraine and the war that is ongoing right now in Europe. You know, like there were better times where we could negotiate better deals for Georgia. For example, right after the dissolution of Soviet Union, when Baltic states became members of NATO, we could have also joined in. But at that time already, you know, like our democracy was fragile. We were the failed state. I mean, it does matter, of course, how international donors and how international community reacts what is going on in your country, including in terms of institutional building. Like in 2012, when this new government came to power, there was the idea of releasing every single judge that was corrupt from the previous government that was corrupt. But it did not happen, namely because of international pressure, because it was perceived to be retributory. So now we end up having a clan, the real strong union of judges that pretty much even dictate to the parliament and the different ministries how they want to act. So I mean, it depends. Like, you need to be very careful, like in terms of, especially in terms of institutional building. Yeah.
I will answer the second question first and then the first question. If you don't know where the journey is going, don't go that journey at all. There is no surprises, bosses you wanted to be there, because surprises usually is not happy. The second question, the first question is accommodate everybody very generously, but do what you want. I remember very well, Lavrov visited Cairo, especially to meet with the young kids from Tahrir Square. He came to the meeting with the two topics in the agenda. Tall guy, smart, but we don't get scared easily. Representing Russia, two topics on the meeting. Topic number one, what we are going to do about Israel. Around me, a lot of leftist Islamists who wanted to raise jihad tomorrow. I told them, you son of a bitches, you talk, we cooked. I am the one who's talking. And I said, what actually even the Islamists, when it came to the power, continue. We respect the peace treaty, we want the peace treaty, we are not changing the peace treaty. Question number two was, are you going to help the revolution in Libya? At that time, Libya was starting. We said, Libyan people is our people. You are most welcome here, but you cannot stop us from helping our brothers. Polite, nice, but we implemented what we want. Accommodate everybody, but do what you want. If you know where the journey is going. If you don't know where the journey is going, you are out of the game.
All right, we have a question here. And then how many other questions do we have out there? One, okay, great. Yeah, let's take a round of questions, and we'll start off with yours, and then up there. Anybody else?
Sure. I'm Derek Brown. My question comes out of the experience of Egypt and the Philippines, and I'm also thinking about Nepal. You talked about how the military learned how to divide the opposition. I'm very interested in what made the military at the time of the People Power Revolution in the Philippines ultimately decide to support the revolution. Similar to Nepal, when the generals decided not to shoot Jana Andalan II, all the participants who were there in favor, and let the king topple. So what is it we can learn about the histories of the militaries and the context that we're in to understand in many of the countries that are authoritarian, that are being propped up by military regimes? Is there anything to be learned from the experience in the Philippines right now, or the contrary experience that we see in Egypt?
The question, then we'll take the gentleman up there in the back, and I guess anybody else. All right.
Thank you. I mean, I will ask the question, but I hate to do this. I just want to say something real quick. I think it lacks creativity when we say if you don't see the journey or where it goes, you should not achieve it or go for it, because in many cases, that's how change works. If there is corruption in a government and there is corruption in whatever institution you're at, and you don't know how to solve it, you find a way to meet people who are creative enough to find a vision to do something. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in whatever dark ages we're at. Regardless, my question is, it's been stated that it's easy to criticize the government, but it's hard to run it, which is absolutely true. In a way, certain revolutions temporarily succeed because activists can make others agree on a criticism, and that results a change. but also we need people to run the government, so the revolution eventually fails. People with the power are filled with ego and they need the power of money, which was also stated. They will not let this power and money go to others. Even after the revolutions, they will make it hard for the new quote-unquote government or whatever the new thing is to succeed. As you said, you need to know your enemy because they might sit next to you. So now that comes the question portion. How can we make a true change when we are facing the greediness of the human nature for power? Also, how can we find a way to work with the government? And lastly, just side question, I think we should find, in my opinion, a way in education to take advantage of it. So how can we take advantage of education to change people's mind? Because it's never been brought up in this panel, and I would love to know if you guys have any ideas of how we can take advantage of education. Thank you.
All right, we'll take your answers, and then if you'll stay, Breza's got something to add as well at the end. Yeah, but go ahead, please.
I'll address the first question, and then I'll need some time to think about the second question. So about the military in the Philippines, 2 points. One, we have to stop assuming that the military is a unitary actor. Okay, so in every place around the world, the military has many, security forces in general have many subgroups, many factions, and we have to find those factions and make cracks in them. In the Philippines, we were very, there were alliances made between anti-Marcos forces, pro-democracy forces, and groups of young officers within the military, for example, RAM. And those were, exploited so that the military was it was a faction of that military that defected, and then the way that people power happened was that a faction of the military defected. Marcos told the rest of the military to fire on their fellow comrades, not their fellow soldiers, and then the people were called to the street to go and protect the defections. So find where the jealousies are. For some reason, everybody usually doesn't like the Marines. Find where the jealousies, the competitions are, and take advantage of those. And the second is numbers. When you have a lot of people in the street, there's a chance that the soldier who is being given the command to fire the cannon, to fire the gun, is going to think, is my kid in there? Is my neighbor there? And think of the different sort of loyalties and identities that people in the military have. Just a quick story. So one tactic that we used during Marcos' times was our activists would target the kids of generals in college and be friends with them, date them, and that's how we got intel. So soldiers are people too.
That was not a question addressed to me.
I used to be a recruiter in my political party when I was in your age, maybe younger. I never recruited what we call in Arabic anybody not mutahaqqiq. In English it's verified, which is not representing the Arabic word. Anybody with a less financial resources is not first team. Anybody more interested in women's or men are not your first team. Anybody more religious than the others are not your first team. And you build it down, up this way. Then you have a critical mass. Later on, you change a little bit. We've been doing on the weekends meeting party because we wanted to make sure we see if are you serious or not. If you are not serious, you are not invited again. On the weekends, where everybody's going to the cinema or to the bar. No, we choose the weekends. We ruin our own weekends just to test other people. You test, you delegate, and you monitor. Test, delegate, monitor. And you keep doing this gradually. You don't meet me yesterday, you trust me, and then you appoint me as a leader of this university. Sorry. You taste means small task, then bigger task, then bigger task. And then you build the trust, the capacity of the person. And then you have a great team, you can conquer the world.
Thank you. Okay, to make some concluding remarks, Breza Reis will come down from campus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is great.
Okay,
yeah?
great.
See?
Thank you.
He was like, John was really nervous.
No,
like,
no.
oh, what can I say after all these people who are, now I am nervous.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, we're
I'm
just
really
going to
not
put you on the
speaker.
spot.
Yeah, I'm really not actually the speaker. This
No,
is why
thank
we
you.
have Slobodan and Srđa in Canvas. They are doing all the speeches, and then we are just behind. So my job today is to do the takeaways and say thank you and to tell about the plans, but it kind of changed over the last 3 days, because from what I hear, like, you actually really needed space to speak, and John was like really trying to finish it earlier, but I was like, let people speak. They really need to speak to each other. And then there was a question about the education. So the whole idea about People Power Academy is because well, Slobo is here, and he was like last 10 years talking like, we need like to school for activists. We need to put all this in one school. We need to educate people. So like, we are a really small team. There's like 10 people in total in Canvas, believe it or not. And you met most of us. There's 3 more people in Serbia. And it was really hard job. Like, we were trying to educate activists for last 20 years, traveling a lot, always being at the airport, in our suitcases. And at some point, we realized that we are old and that we cannot travel anymore that much. So we kind of were starting to think what we can do and how we can still educate activists and be there. And COVID started, so we were like, oh, let's do it online. But Slobo was like, let's do it online. Let's do People Power Academy. So first year, 300 people. Second year, 400 people online. And then I was like, yeah, let's do it in person. Srđa was like, you're crazy. We are not bringing people. Like, no. Let's keep it online. And then 2 days after, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it at UVA. So this is usually how Canvas works. Like, we would first say, no. And then next day, everyone is on it. So the whole idea of this event, and we are not organizing conference for the sake of the conference, because we know there's a lot of conferences. We actually met some of you on some conferences. We actually want to launch this, to use this opportunity to launch the School for Activists. We actually want to educate more and more activists. But from what we heard in last 3 days, not only activists. So Zoran this morning said, like, we need to bring more politicians. I think we should educate politicians on strategic organizing and on violent movement building, and so that they can organize better and they can understand what's going on. Of course, investing in future generation and young people. So, Dominika and students here were, thank you for being here, because then we would be really like geriatrics here if it wasn't for you guys. So hopefully, next year we will have more Gen Z present. We were mentioning them so much, and maybe this is actually the opportunity for us to think, who are those new generations who are coming that we need to educate and we need to bring here? More Dominikas, we need in this room. So this is definitely the lesson learned from these 3 days. And then also, like, we need to bring other NGOs. There are few NGOs coming from DC, and it's really, thank you, because you spent the last 3 days with us here. And I think we need to educate NGOs, because from what I heard, like, it's really difficult, when you're working with NGO and then you usually use all these complicated words and you're thinking about policies, procedures, how to please donors. I'm sorry, donors, sorry. But, that's how you usually think when you are working even with the activists. And this really makes us angry. because most of the time activists don't have time for all this policies, procedures, protocols, reporting, and all these things that you know is taking our time, and we cannot do the real thing. So I think like educating donors in this school would be very good for them as well. So we are hoping actually next year to bring more young people, more politicians, more NGOs, and more academics and more students. I mean, we are here for 3 days. Thank you all for being here, but we are really hopeful that next year we will engage even more UVA students, so you know they can actually organize better, do more, and start something big here as well. We talked to Steve a lot in past couple of months, and like we have plans about organizing an online course with UVA, Executive Ed. We do plan to mentor and work more in details with activists, and we do plan to come here next year, but with you know more people involved, with more people engaged, and yes, with more artists, because with artivism is really important. So I think that yesterday night we actually all needed. It was like a release of a lot of stress. So artivism is really big. They always send a strong message. So thanks to our artists. And since I'm the only one keeping you from the lunch, I will not take any more of your time, but I would love us to see, because this group of everyone here are really those who are workers, who have great ideas. Like you are the leaders of activism and social movements in your own country. I wish that's like Ahmed was mentioning, that's my dream actually, to see some kind of joint activity or idea to come out from this gathering, and you're more than welcome to send us suggestions, to talk to us how we can do this better, what we can do better, and what are actually your needs so we can do more in upcoming years. Thank you all. I just want to, there are 4 girls in behind, and Jelena, Milica, stand up. No, they don't want to stand up, but no, because 4 of them are actually the responsible ones for everything happening. And yes, thank you, volunteers. We adopted Gina. I'm sorry, Slobo and Jelena, but we know what she's going to do next. So thank you all, and thank you actually for everything that you said for the openness, for willing to talk to each other, and I really feel like happy that I have all of you in my life. So thank you all. Ahmed is saying picture. No, because... Oh, yes, okay, of course, thank you. It was really